You're listening to the Author Stories Podcast, bringing you the story behind the stories and the storytellers.
Margaret White,
Terry Brooks,
Sheena Kamal,
Matthew Quick,
JT Ellison,
Walt D. Williams,
Brad Ford,
Corey, Dr. O,
Brandon Sanderson,
Robin Mott,
Ernest Klein, Jim Butcher,
Charlene Harris.
Visit hankgarner.com for archives of all the shows. Today's guest is...
Well, thanks for joining me again for the Author Stories Podcast, where I bring you the story behind the stories and the storytellers. Today, I'm super excited to have Chris Hauty back on the show with me today. You remember him from the early part of 2020. I think he was one of the first shows of 2020 that we released, and we talked about his amazing debut novel, Deep State. And Chris has joined us today to talk about his follow-up, Savage Road, which is the second book in the Hayley Chill thriller series. And I'll tell you what, Chris, I didn't think you could top Deep State. It had such whiplash, twists and turns, but you've done it. Savage Road is an amazing follow-up, and thanks for joining me again today.
Hey, Hank, thanks very much for having me, and thanks for the kind words. I'm really super psyched that you have enjoyed the book, and that I did, hopefully, more people will agree, avoided the dreaded sophomore slump.
Absolutely. Chris, and I'm going to put links to our conversation we had last year in the show notes so people can catch up if they didn't catch that. But, you told us this great story of, having this great career in screenwriting and the transition from screenwriting to novel writing. You've had a year to sit with this and to kind of see how that initial book launch went, and go from a debut author who a lot of people were unfamiliar with, even though a lot of us had probably seen your work and didn't know we were doing it, to now the sophomore effort and releasing a book as an established writer. How is this book launch feeling to you as compared to last year?
Well, you did just kind of touch very briefly on one of the reasons why I'm enjoying this new career as a book author, in some contrast to my much longer career as a screenwriter. But when you mentioned the fact that you may have been seeing my work and not even realize it, writer. So we can talk about that later, perhaps. But this book launch is in some ways easier. It's a little different by virtue of, having done it before. Excuse me. And but also harder because of, the world that this book is coming out into. Last year, when Deep State came out, which was the same week of January, first week in January 7th, I believe, we were pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, and I was looking forward to some book events in Georgia and Arizona and local events here in California. And of course, today we find ourselves in a much different and more homebound world. So, that's a big question. I can say, we all are very familiar with the limitations and difficulties of the COVID has imposed on all of us. So speaking in terms of sort of the experience as an author with this second launch, it's just great. I can't, it probably gets a little dull for me just to talk about how excited and happy I am. But, there you have it, Hank. It's just so much fun to, this time I was with this second book, I knew there was going to be an audience for it. Unlike the first book, which, it was my first book I'd ever written. I didn't know if I was going to sell it, didn't know if it was going to be published by a big or large or a small publisher. In this case, I had a very clear idea that, hey, there's going to be a lot of people out there who are going to get to experience these words that I'm putting down in my computer. And so, that's exciting for me. Some people have asked me, what about the pressure of, having to repeat yourself after a pretty satisfying debut? And, frankly, I just am tickled to have this opportunity to have an audience and just not have a whole lot of interference from agents or producers or directors or actors, all those other collaborators that I had no choice but to link arms with in the movie world. So that's a long-winded answer to a relative question, which is it's really great to come out with a second book and have an audience for it. So I'm having a good time.
Well, you bring out a great point that, we talk a lot about the gift of anonymity. And when writing that first book, the real gift is that no one's expecting it. So there's no expectations, there's no pressure, there's no agent usually breathing down your neck or a publisher, editors, all of that stuff. It's just you and the story. And that can be a beautiful thing. But some people struggle with that sophomore effort because then all of a sudden there are expectations, there are people waiting for you. And then, how do you be creative while people are demanding product, and all of this weird stuff. But what we don't think about a lot of times is, like you said, the pressure of getting the book sold, of, making those first contacts and establishing those relationships and publishing. All that was done. You just needed to write the book and deliver it. So that can be a welcome gift as well.
It really is. I think I've been so conditioned by more than 3 decades in Hollywood for adversity and having, just low expectations of things working out. It's just, there's so much disappointment and delay in Hollywood, and I don't care who you are. I mean, you can speak to the biggest 800-pound gorillas in Hollywood, and they experience the same disappointment and delays that even a middle class writer such as myself would. So yeah, I mean, it's a real luxury. I'm extremely grateful to have just kind of found myself in this situation, and,
Right.
And to my editor and publishers and agents and all of them to, just to help put me in this position. So it's a real blessing. I'm very, very grateful.
One of the challenges to writing a book or books like you have that are politically charged and deal with topics that seem to be ripped from the headlines, even if they're not. They resonate that way. Is that truth can be a crazy, funny thing, and the best laid plans of fiction writers sometimes wind up on the front page of the papers in ways that we never anticipated. How do you approach, dealing with topics that are timely and, really cut to the quick, while also navigating a real world where sometimes truth is stranger than fiction?
Obviously I'm taking headlines and I don't know if I rip them so much as massage them. I'm massaging current events, and I think it's fun. There's for me as a writer and hopefully as a reader to see things. If my readers see things in the books that immediately recall something that happened in the news a year, 2, 3 years ago, and maybe they have better retention than I do, but it just provides a little spark, I think, and a little bit of fuel to power the narrative. So I don't really worry too much about current events making the things I write moot or contradicting them. I learned a long time ago, especially working in Hollywood, not to worry about the things that I can't control. And so, I can't control what's going to happen. And I think if you write an entertaining, action-packed, twisty thriller like I like to write, it just doesn't make any difference because you've captured the attention of your reader, and you're going to hold them regardless of what's happening, on CNN or Fox News or anything. I had one more point to make, and I've spaced it out, but hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. So Hayley Chill returns for book 2 after finishing with that amazing ending, and we still won't spoil exactly what happens at the end of the last book, because I'm sure there's going to be new readers that come in and want to get caught up with that. But when you found yourself sitting there with the blank computer screen with book 2, what were some of the hurdles that you had to jump over to get into a new story?
Well, I had originally conceived, at least by the time that I finished Deep State, I had even before the publisher purchased the book, they asked me what book 2 was about, and so I had to come up with something fast, and just came up with just an area. I think it's safe to say that no spoiler in saying that Savage Road explores as a narrative theme cyber warfare, and that's the macro aspect of the book. On a more micro level, there are issues and narrative threads in Hayley's life and backstory that I wanted to explore, and immediately saw the possibility of exploring that over 3 books. So even though each book is a standalone, we're following this, in the TV world, they call it the big bad. So I don't know what the version would be in books, but it's sort of, this continuing exploration on Hayley's part on a personal level over 3 books. And so with at least having, kind of like that macro idea of, okay, well, there's a lot going on right now in cyber warfare. We're just seeing it, in current headlines in the last few weeks. With the Russian state's purported attack on U.S. government agencies' networks, there's plenty of story possibilities in that issue. So it's not difficult to build a story around that, and then already have this pre-existing idea for a narrative on a personal level. I find it very easy to. I don't suffer the curse of the blinking cursor. I'm pretty ready to write. Right from you sit me down in front of a computer and it's happening. So I'm lucky in that way as well. And just not if I was writing literary fiction as opposed to commercial fiction, I think that would be, that's tricky. That's a different thing. Having a franchise character like this just makes that process of starting a new book much easier.
Well, some of the topics and some of the plot that gets the story going. We've seen, Tom Clancy was dealing with some of these issues years ago, and God rest his soul, we lost him too soon. But when he would deal with cyber attacks and things like that, there was always a standing army behind that, and there was this interesting world where the cyber attacks would then lead to other things, and now we're seeing that entire warfare can be made in the cyberspace. When you're looking at how to believably bring about the things that happen in the plot, the tech behind it. What are some of the things that you lean on to make it so believable?
Well, I think if you get bogged down too much in the technical aspects of something like that, I don't think you're going to engage the reader in a way that will keep them turning the pages. So, I think it comes from some of my work experience as a screenwriter. I think, for me as a reader, I write books that I would like to read. And then hopefully, I find some common ground with many other readers. So I researched Savage Road more than I did Deep State because of the technical aspects of cyber warfare. But it wasn't so much for exactly how network engineers protect systems. I don't think anyone can get through a full page of that. If you were really, getting the authentic detail of those systems. Frankly, it doesn't even look like English. There's so many acronyms and just unrecognizable nomenclature that it just wouldn't be readable. So, it was, for me, the cyber warfare was more interesting in what those issues are. For instance, one of the things, and I learned a lot in the research of for this book, but for instance, what with the recent Russian attack, assuming it was Russia, which most of our security agencies suggest it was, that's it. People don't know what to call it in terms of, is it an act of war, or is it merely a malicious actor? So it's in that gray area. It exists in a gray area that a kind of warfare that didn't exist 100 years ago or even 60 years ago, where we knew when we were being attacked. In this case, you're not quite sure what to call it, even know exactly who did it, but usually they have they can determine get a pretty good idea of that. So, how do you respond to that? So it puts political leaders in a difficult bind, but it also, on the other hand, maybe that's better because it's like no one died in these attacks. What was really lost except information, or is information weaponized? I mean, these are all just kind of cool ideas that for me provide a lot of narrative potential and dilemmas for my characters to face. Not so much how is it done, how is the attack made. So I give I try to put in as much detail, authentic detail, to lend the sense of that authenticity, and then for me get into the fun, juicy parts, which is drama and conflict and the issues more than the technical detail.
Chris, how did you find that your writing process changed or evolved or matured from writing Deep State to writing Savage Road? We talked last time about, that you had only written screenplays prior to that, and that the words literally look different on the page. You're going from margin to margin instead of everything floating in the middle like we see in screenplays a lot. But other than that, how do you feel like you've changed as a writer from book one to book two?
Probably, writing with more confidence. Certainly selling the book and getting the kind of response that I got to Deep State, having the New York Times book review editors selected as one of their editors' choice books. I think that was in March. Recently, Apple Books selected Deep State as a book of the year, 15 books, both fiction and nonfiction. They selected Deep State. So, that kind of response, plus the response from readers around the world, has given me a lot of confidence. It's not that I didn't have confidence as a writing the first book, but I just think to get to the end, you have to have some level of confidence. But that just made it kind of freed me up to sort of keep exploring my abilities. So it's not written exactly the same way. You will see a lot of stuff that a lot of elements that I just tried with the first book, really because I didn't know any better. I just thought it would be cool. And, for instance, in Deep State, with characters, lesser characters, or not so less characters, as they're leaving the stage. When I get to the point in the story where they're no longer going to appear, they have no more active role in the narrative, I tell the reader what happens to that person, potentially for years ahead to their death, because that interests me, and I would say, well, easily the majority of readers loved it. Some people hated it, but most people enjoyed it. So I continue that in book two, and then try a few new ideas or just new ways of putting down the words to see how that goes. So I would say what was different was just writing with a little bit more muscle, maybe, and confidence, that I knew what the hell I was doing.
When you are no stranger to developing great characters. You've done that for years with your screenwriting. What is it about Hayley Chill that makes for a great protagonist?
Well, that's a good question. Why is she a great protagonist? She is, I think she's immediately sympathetic, and gains our rooting interest by being both an underdog and overachieving at the same time, if that's possible. She's an underdog by virtue of her gender and where she comes from. Both, two elements that are usually or typically or culturally, underestimated. And I think what else makes her a great character? She's just, I think she's exciting and fun to be around. She has a wry sense of humor, which I think is necessary, as some form of humor is necessary for a character that you want to spend a very long time with. She's has flaws. She's not perfect. A few reader reviews mentioned something about her Hayley being too much of almost like a superhero, and it's odd when I see that, because I didn't conceive of her like that at all. I think my overriding desire in creating her character and making the choices I did, first by making her a woman, was to eliminate that sense of omnipotent power and invincibility. So she is relentless, and she takes a beating, but she is certainly human. And I think in that way, I hope my aim, my ambition is that that's what makes her great, quote unquote, great for a reader to experience from book to book, because as you get to know her in book one, and then get to know her more in book two, and even deeper in book three and on out, a reader will appreciate Hayley Chill as not only as a living and breathing human being, but someone who's growing. She's not finished, and she's young. She's in Deep State. She's 25 years old. In Savage Road, she's just a year older. So that I have two sons. They're 20 something and 30 something. So those guys are changing by the year, and that's fun to watch. And so similarly with Hayley Chill, we're just getting started.
Chris, we spoke for a minute before we started recording about the year that has been 2020. And when we spoke last time, it was just before we knew all of the crazy stuff that was going to happen. And now, talking on the other side of that, it's so weird to look back on this year. Do you foresee a global pandemic working its way into your stories anytime in the near future?
Oh, it did. Well, obviously, I've been busy all year, and I guess I'm fortunate, if that's the word that I can use, in the sense that my daily life has not changed all that much from 2020 to, and I'm sure you've heard that from many other authors, all of them. So writers are a less impacted lot. I mean, so I've read some writers say that they found it very difficult to focus on their work this year. That was not the case for me. So I've been spending most of 2020, almost all of the pandemic, writing book 3 of this series. And obviously I had already started researching it and developing the story. I outlined like crazy before I start writing. And I think I'd gotten into the book. I'd conceived of it, and I can't go into any details about exact specifics about what I was writing, but the pandemic impacted it, not in a crucial way, but definitely in setting, in sort of in the locale and setting. So I was able to just pivot and it I made it work. Again, it's like I can't control these things, and it's not the pandemic in book 3 is not. I could have not written it into the story, but again, like I said, I think by the time the book is in readers' hands, I think, knock on wood, thank you, pharmaceuticals, big pharma, pandemic will be in our rearview mirror, but it'll be interesting for a reader to encounter it, in the book, in the narrative, and setting the scene and impacting characters in a not a consequential way, but certainly incidentally. So that's what happened with the pandemic in my fictional work.
Well, I can't wait to see what you do with it. If you love Deep State, you're going to love Savage Road. There's a link to it in the show notes of this episode where you can go out and grab it. It's been available for a couple of days now, so your bookstore should have it in stock, or grab it, in Kindle edition. Chris, is there going to be an audiobook available soon?
Yes, absolutely.
Great.
Yeah, it should be. It's available. Great.
And we'll put links there as well. Savage Road, a Hayley Chill thriller, book 2 is available everywhere now. We've got links to it. Chris, where can people find you online if they want to dig into all the great stuff you're doing?
Well, I have a website, and interestingly enough, it's at chrishauty.com. That's the good fortune of having an unusual last name. Hauty.com, and I'm on all the social medias using generally the same name: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Not LinkedIn. Sorry, folks.
We'll link up all those places in the show notes to make it easy for folks to find you. Chris, always a pleasure to catch up and to chat. I love Savage Road. We're going to send everyone to pick up a copy. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Hey, thank you, Hank.
Both Barrels Publishing is the brainchild of successful indie author James P. Sumner. He has self-published over 15 titles in the last 5 years and has over 800,000 downloads so far in his career, meaning he has a wealth of knowledge and experience to share with the indie publishing community. Knowing the struggles of the modern-day indie author as well as he does, he wanted to create a platform that would allow writers of any level to learn the ropes, navigate the pitfalls, and produce a professional novel without wasting time or money in the process. Both Barrels Publishing is the perfect one-stop shop for any indie author, combining James's expertise with his own team of editors and designers so you can help your novel realize its full potential and learn how to publish yourself. The purpose of Both Barrels Publishing is to help indie authors get their novels ready for publication without all the stress, hassle, and unnecessary expense. We want to make your lives easier, which is why we're giving you access to a top-notch team to publish your novels, along with a generous discount on their services. You can also work one-on-one with James to learn the intricacies of self-publishing. No hidden cost, no false promises. We simply want you to publish the best version of your novel. BothBarrelsPublishing.com.